Welcome to the Rob Burgess Show. I'm, of course, your host, Rob Burgess. On this, our 150th episode, our returning guest is Sarah Kendzior. You first heard Sarah Kendzior on episodes 70, 80, 89, 99, 112, 128, and 138. Sarah Kendzior is best known for her reporting on St. Louis, her coverage of the 2016 election, and her academic research on authoritarian states. She is currently an op-ed columnist for the Globe and Mail, and she was named by Foreign Policy as one of the 100 people you should be following on Twitter to make sense of global events. Her reporting has been featured in many publications including Politico, Slate, The Atlantic, Fast Company, The Chicago Tribune, Teen Vogue, and The New York Times. Her book, The View from Flyover Country, Dispatches from the Forgotten America, was published April 17, 2018, and is now a New York Times-bestseller. You can listen to her podcast, which she co-hosts with Andrea Chalupa, Gaslit Nation. And now on to the show.
I'm really excited that you're back. There's obviously been a lot going on, and for Ukraine and impeachment, I was like, I got to talk to Sarah. She's right now. She's been talking about this stuff a lot, and for a long time, and people are just now catching up. So everyone who needs to get educated should definitely go back and at least listen to the first couple episodes of Gaslit Nation to get caught up on what everyone is just finding out about right now, right? I mean, you guys have been talking about this forever.
Oh, yeah. It's been 3 years. And honestly, they can go back and listen to your show when I was first on, I think in 2017, and listen to a far less exhausted version of me explaining probably the same things that I'm going to explain yet again.
Listen to my podcast, too. Let's not forget. But yeah, definitely. So, yes, impeachment. It's here. We've been talking about it for a very long time, since the first time I think we talked. And I know from previous conversations, you've been hot and cold on Nancy Pelosi, as have I. First she stared Trump down and won the government shutdown thing. I was like, yes, okay, that's what we need to see. That's the spirit. And then she dithered on impeachment and tapped the brakes and tried to quell the frankly, the people of color, let's just say it, who've been pointing this out forever, and I don't understand why we're focusing on these few people in the middle. Whatever, that's a different subject. But anyway, I don't trust it yet. I've been hurt too many times with the Democrats, and I want this to work. But like, first Mueller was a big disappointment. I had a lot of faith in that, and that kind of all how that went. And what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm very wary, especially because, they're not making progress. They don't seem to have had backup plans for anything. All of this, the crime, the corruption, the obstruction that the Trump administration has been committing has been continuous, and it's been obvious the entire time. So when they do things like not answer a subpoena, you need to have some kind of backup plan. And when the Mueller probe is clearly failing, as was obvious by early 2018, they should have had a backup plan. And then, once they got actual power, once they got power of the House, they should have immediately proceeded with impeachment. Back then I was saying, if you don't have impeachment hearings, you're going to end up with show trials. You're going to end up with the GOP not only abusing power in practice, but also rewriting the narrative, controlling the rhetoric, and flipping the script, making the investigators the investigated, making the victims the abusers. And that's exactly what they're doing. And imagine if at this point, in early October, we were in like our 6th month of impeachment hearings and all of this crime and corruption that was allegedly revealed as a revelation over the weekend, although honestly, we talked about it on Gaslit Nation for about 5 months. Nonetheless, imagine that was already in people's minds. Imagine that the American public, Watergate style, had continual exposure to hearings that, showcased these crimes. We'd be in a much better place. And yes, it is race-based. I don't know why Pelosi is splitting the Democratic base. I don't know why she targeted Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar, and especially Rashida Tlaib, who is a leader in impeachment. She's known for saying impeach the motherfucker, but, what she did is far more than that. She wrote articles. She brought forward, I think, the biggest petition in American history, 10 million signatures calling for impeachment. She did concrete things, and she was backed by older representatives, also of color, Maxine Waters, Al Green, who had been pushing for impeachment since 2017. And so we could have gone in as a full force, I mean, and hopefully Republicans, people like Justin Amash and others would have joined in to just have accountability, to have justice, to have clarity for the American public, because everyone deserves that. And it doesn't matter if they voted for a Democrat or Republican. It doesn't matter if they voted for Trump. The Trump voters deserve the truth, just like everybody else does. And I have no idea why she did what she did, and I don't trust her anymore. I'm obviously glad that she finally turned the corner on impeachment. But as I was trying to figure out why she was doing all this, I basically vetted Pelosi and kind of realized she hadn't been vetted in a long time. I guess because she'd just been in office for so long that people took for granted that she was a reliable Democratic leader. Found all this terrible stuff, just consistent patterns of behavior. I mean, nothing like Trump level, nothing that bad. But concerning to me, I don't think she's the right person for this role. She is what we have, though, so hopefully she'll make the right decisions going forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it makes, the timing of it makes it seem like, and they are focusing very solely on this Ukraine thing, but, it's just like, there's so much. Like, why this? Why is this? Like, yes, he sold our country out. Yeah, I know. We've been saying this for a long time.
That's like how he got into office. That's what I don't understand. Yeah, like this is how he got in 2016. He conspired with a foreign power to subvert an election and smear his opponent. Like literally the same thing. And that is why we had the Mueller report, which mostly ended up being an obstruction probe, an obstruction into the investigation that, Comey and others were doing into Russian interference in the election and in the administration itself. And so we knew all this. The fact that people are running around acting like this is some new thing that Trump came up with, or that, wow, I just realized Bill Barr is dirty. I'm like, oh my God, people, like, why do you think he was hired? Like back in even 1992, conservatives were saying that Bill Barr was too much, that he was like the cover up general, that he was like the dude that, dirty Republicans call when they want their, bad business swept under the rug. Like we all knew this. And it is so weird for me to see this complete historical revisionism and also all these other crimes, 2 years of administrative crimes, including things like abuse of migrants, which I do think is very serious. And if you deem that not impeachable, which Pelosi has, like, what are you saying exactly? Like, what are you saying about Central American migrants? What are you saying about Latino people in general? Like, I have some questions about her stances on that and other people's stances. But yeah, it is weird that they're going with a Ukraine crime, and also that what the whistleblower said, seems completely accurate to me, in part because it was already in the public domain as early as April and May. Like we did whole Gaslit Nation episodes on the whistleblower's, secret complaint, which is just basically, multiple people from the administration, from the inside, backing up what appeared to be happening, what you can kind of discern from reading, Ukrainian, Russian, and American media. But, we all knew this. So, yeah, I also find it weird. It's like they decided, OK, now is impeachment time. Let's find a crime. OK, whistleblower. Whistleblower is good. And I don't know whether it has to do with Biden. I'm not quite sure what their logic is, but I think it's a mistake to not look at the pattern, because the pattern of criminality is what's important, because it is so consistent and it goes back so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you pointed out, I saw on Twitter that you could just have a impeachment a day calendar and just pick a new one every single day, and I think it would have been maybe smarter to make it more varied, make it last longer, make Republicans answer for each count. You know what I mean? Like doing this one, focusing on this one thing, and they're like, oh, well, I guess that didn't work. Well, it's like, all right, just send them the next one. What do you think about this? You okay with this? What about this? Just keep making them take that vote. And if they don't like it, maybe they should get rid of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So.
I don't know what could be more important. I mean, they have not been able to pass any kind of legislative agenda. Like the Democrats haven't been able to, because McConnell just, stamps everything down. Nothing gets through. So you might as well have these hearings, where you bring all of the criminality and the corruption of this administration to the fore, so Americans know what their government is doing, so they can make an informed decision next time they vote. And because the crimes are very serious, they've cost human life, they've caused human suffering, like that's all worth talking about. And it's weird to me that they seem to want to rush the impeachment vote. I always thought the value of impeachment lay much more in the hearings, because the Republicans are so unlikely to convict in the Senate. But it allowed the Democrats the opportunity to have this sort of like OJ style free for all trial spectacle, which honestly, if you want to compete with Trump and get to him and like play on that field, but without all the lying and brutality and shitty stuff he does, that's the way to do it, is to have a big public spectacle of justice and accountability. I don't know why they gave up that opportunity and why they seem to be rushing it now, because what I worry is, okay, they'll vote to impeach him. It'll sort of mean something to Trump. He won't like having that asterisk. He won't like having that bad mark. It's not going to be enough to make him resign, I don't think, or step down. I also am very skeptical that the Republicans would convict. And even if they convict, I kind of doubt he will leave. They are operating completely above the law. And it was obvious that that's going to be the way that they would behave the whole time, which is why it was so important to do this early. I mean, a very cynical part of me wonders, did they decide to do it now because they knew it was too late? And if so, like, why? Like, what exactly is the objective here? There's a lot about this that I don't quite understand, because it just doesn't make sense pragmatically. It doesn't make sense morally. It doesn't make sense legally, even from the Democratic side, from the side where you actually expect those things to happen. I think we've given up on the Republicans. So yeah, I've got questions.
Yeah, and I never got I know we've talked about this before, but the whole wait till 2020 crowd, it's like, you're assuming that we have free and fair elections and we have 2020, and I haven't seen any evidence that we've done anything to address what happened last time. And it's it's like, is that even a possibility
worse
at this point? Like,
what's so weird is that the Pelosi crowd is very adamant, we'll impeach him at the ballot box. They kept saying that, or he'll self-impeach, or, all these nonsensical things. But Pelosi herself admitted that our elections are not secure, which is true. They haven't been secure the entire time. Of course, this Ukraine situation, in which, Trump is doing a quid pro quo for election interference against a potential presidential rival, obviously shows there's foreign interference in our elections. There's likely foreign interference from, multiple states that Trump has had relationships with, including obviously Russia, but also Saudi Arabia and Israel. There's also, insecure voting machines themselves and the companies that own them, which are linked to members of the Trump administration. Jenny Cohn is somebody, who studied that in great detail. We have domestic voter suppression, voter ID laws, racist discrimination, voter intimidation. All these things add up to an insecure election. So obviously, waiting until 2020 as some sort of, we're just going to vote him out is not a great plan. Even though, honestly, I think if there were a free and fair election, I do think he would be voted out, because he's extremely unpopular. And I think he'd lose to basically all of the Democrats. It doesn't even matter which one. But, it just seemed like they were playing with our lives, like playing politics in a time of crisis, in a time where we're facing, I think, the most serious national security concerns of my lifetime, I think possibly in American history, and also a significant public safety threat coming at us from a number of levels. Like, this is not the time to be cavalier or flip or even hopeful. If you're in charge, if you're actually in a position of power, you should not just be sitting around hoping that things work out. You should be actively making them work out, because it's your literal job. And I don't like seeing all these representatives get on Twitter and bitch and moan with the rest of us like they're just regular old civilians suffering through this. I'm like, this is your job. I don't like being the person who has to write to a senator and explain who various members of the Russian mafia are, because they're behaving as if they don't know. And maybe they do know, and they just don't want to like break that news to the American public. And maybe I'm being annoying by doing that, but I feel like they need to be doing that. They need to be clarifying the situation in the most stark terms possible, even if it scares the shit out of people, because it is scary and people have the right to know.
Well, the good news is that Mitt Romney is at threat level concerned, bordering on troubled. So
yes.
we've got that going for us.
They're always deeply concerned. Deeply concerned is the new thoughts and prayers, It's right. They don't do anything.
Exactly. But I love how we're just, not us, but the Republicans and anyone in Trump's circle that's like going on TV these days still is like they're so good at moving the goalposts. Just that's what they do. It's amazing that Mueller was trying to prove or not prove whether or not there was collusion or not collusion, but coordination or conspiracy, and then just the thing that he releases has it's happening. He's saying it right there, and now they're saying, oh, but no quid pro quo. It's like, first of all, yes. Second of all, we just spent 2 years talking about whether or not this happened, and he said it. He admitted it. The thing he really said it. So what are we talking about? There's nothing else to talk about. That's still illegal. You can't have your Justice Department prosecute your political rivals. You definitely can't have a foreign government prosecute your political rivals. What are you talking about?
Right, exactly. And it's so predictable that they're going to act that way, because that's how this group of people, Trump, and then the Roger Stone School of Politics and Bill Barr and Pompeo, is how they've behaved their entire lives. So they're going to come out and they're going to lie, and they're going to fabricate new standards, and they're going to invent new laws, because that's honestly their key strategy. It's not that they don't know right from wrong. I'm so tired of seeing people say that. They know right from wrong and they don't care, because they want to change what the definition of wrong is. They want to make it, in Trump's case, he wants to personalize it. Like, if I did it, if Donald Trump did it, it's right. If you did it, it's wrong. Like, that's the definition. There's no objective truth anymore. And they want to do the same with law. And that's a much more concerning thing, because they have the power in the executive branch and through the Supreme Court to rewrite the law, to exonerate themselves, and, even worse, I think, to target innocent people as their victims. I think that that's where we're heading now. And this was all very, very obvious. So many people cut Mueller so much slack when he did such an abysmal job. He did not investigate this with urgency. He did not present his results clearly. He did not give the recommendation that I think would have been like the necessary kick in the ass for Pelosi and others who did not want to go forward with impeachment. If he had just flat out said, like, yes, ball's in your court now, you need to impeach, I think there would have been far more pressure, because the American public wouldn't have been parsing his words, trying to figure out, well, what is this guy trying to say? What's he recommending that we do? Is this urgent? He seems kind of out of it and sleepy. Like, he doesn't seem all that distressed. People respond to that. They respond to emotional cues. And the Republicans are very good at that. They're very good at making like Bill Clinton getting a blowjob in the White House seeming like a giant national security crisis, because of the urgency about which they spoke about it. And the American public didn't really fall for that. Clinton's approval rating stayed pretty high. But I think this kind of cavalier, lackadaisical, let's kick back kind of attitude that Pelosi and some of the other representatives have exhibited is harmful. And by comparison, the urgency that AOC and Maxine Waters and Ted Lieu and Brian Schatz and others who have been very consistent in their condemnation of corruption in this administration, and Elizabeth Warren too, I think that really resonates with people, because it makes them say, okay, this is really bad. This is incredibly unusual. This is very dangerous. And these people are actually looking out. And I think folks appreciate that. And I don't understand why the Democrats as a whole, and also people in the intelligence community for that matter, although they're obviously more limited in what they can say publicly, why they have not been responding with this level of publicly stated urgency for the last 3 years. And I mean, I don't know. I always get all this shit. Like, people are like, in the beginning anyway, oh, you're an alarmist. Oh, you're hysterical. Oh, you have no faith in institutions. And I'm like, okay, the last one's true, but the others are not. I'm on the money. I have studied this for a long time. I know what's happening. I know what I'm talking about. And it's like so many people were afraid of just being labeled something bad or laughed at or scorned or whatever. And I'm like, none of that matters when you lose your country. Like, when you lose your country and you lose your freedom, you're not going to be thinking, oh, thank God no one laughed at me before when I was right and they were wrong. Like, you're going to be upset that you're losing your country. And I don't know. It's so weird to me that people are sort of stuck in this like 7th grade mindset, like, ooh, people picking on me. That's the worst thing that can happen. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's like Timothy Snyder says, don't obey in advance.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And that's the other thing, is that there have been multiple best-selling books that have documented this entire crisis, allegedly revealed by the whistleblower. Timothy Snyder wrote one of them. Malcolm Nance wrote one. Craig Unger wrote one. David K. Johnson wrote one. I wrote one that's coming out in April called Hiding in Plain Sight. But it's, basically full of information I've been saying for the last 3 years. And like, all this is out there. Like, all Mueller and the rest of them needed was like a library card and like the internet. Like, that's all the Democrats need, because they're constantly confessing their crimes and they're constantly breaking the law. Like, this is super not hard to figure out. And so that kind of boggles the mind as well.
Well, speaking of hard to figure out, I was listening to Devin Nunes talk, unfortunately, the other day. And he mentioned your co-host Andrea Chalupa's sister. Now,
Yes.
I haven't taken the time to figure out what his theory of the case is exactly. I couldn't really get it. Like somehow he thinks that what Ukraine conspired with Hillary Clinton to lose. I don't know what his point is, but what is he saying? And what, I've heard the obviously Gaslit Nation episodes about this, but just could you summarize what the actual story is?
Sure. So Alexandra Chalupa is the older sister of my Gaslit Nation co-host, Andrea. Sometimes people get them mixed up. She used to work for the DNC as a researcher. In 2016, she was not working for them as a researcher, but became alarmed when Manafort began managing Trump's presidential campaign, because she knew all about Manafort from having studied Ukraine for such a long time and knowing about, Manafort's dirty deals and mafia connections in that part of the world. And she also, was aware that Trump had illicit ties to the Kremlin, because as I said, this stuff was in the public domain. Like it had been, covered, not thoroughly, but covered somewhat for decades. And so she was alarmed. She took the information she had, I think, to the DNC and the FBI. We did an interview with her on Gaslit Nation. It's just called the Alexandra Chalupa interview. So people should double check those facts there. And then, tried to just choose the whistleblower in the room for Paul Manafort and the danger he posed. She was completely vindicated by his arrest and by the revelations about, his lifetime of dirty dealings. But what the Republicans have been trying to do since about 2017, basically at the point, there's a point where they were like, I have nothing to do with Russia. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, we have nothing to do with the Kremlin. They couldn't deny that anymore because too much stuff had come out. Like Don Jr.'s emails had come out, Trump's own, basically placating Putin in public and sucking up to him publicly had come out. Stuff about, Manafort and Felix Sater and Michael Cohen and all these related characters had come out. So they switched it. They decided, okay, well, we're just going to build our own counter narrative, our own propaganda. And it's going to be like, it wasn't the Republicans with Russia, it was the Democrats with Ukraine. And the closest they could come up to anybody who was like researching the Trump campaign, what it was national security concerns in mind, they're trying to make it seem partisan, was Alexandra Chalupa raising the alarm about Paul Manafort. None of this has stuck, but they have tried in so many ways to go after her. It's like WikiLeaks targeted her, Sean Hannity targeted her, Giuliani, Whitaker, I think RT, Nunes. Like we've gone through the number of people. And Alexandra is just a normal person. She's like a mom of 3 kids, just like trying to live her life. And every now and again, she gets like a little alert on her phone and she's like, wow, Putin's chief propagandist just tweeted about me. That's great. So it's like, it's very scary. She's gone through a lot of threats. She's had people stalk her in real life. She's had people hacking her computer. She's had to go to the police multiple times. It's very frightening. And that's one of the reasons that Andrea and I are always so angry on our show, is we've seen the real human toll of this administration close up. And we know that there's no one we can go to because there's like everybody is compromised or they're a coward. And so if we're like, hey, we're being stalked or threatened by this administration, we're being stalked and threatened by our own government, we know basically there's no one who was brave enough to want to protect us. I mean, maybe at this point, because everything we said has been vindicated. But even then, I don't know. And that's a really disturbing thing. That's a situation that friends of mine who live in authoritarian or semi-authoritarian states and work as journalists covering corruption, that's a situation that I've heard them talk about so many times. And it is surreal that we are to some degree in that situation ourselves. Not nearly as bad, but it could be. And it's definitely heading that way. And if the Republicans and basically this mafia syndicate gets its way, I don't know what'll happen to us.
Wow. Yeah. No, I mean, and I don't even think they're like, it's just like you said, Sean Hannity says these things and then they repeat it. I mean, they don't even like think if it's true. It's just like, this is what the talking points are today. And this is the character in this story. So just memorize it. And this is what we're going to go with.
Memorize it. I mean, they get Alexandra and Andrea mixed up all the time. They have her as a Ukrainian, whereas she's actually from California. I mean, it's just, but yeah, it's a bunch of talking points. And then they just have their little bot army and their bot brained army just recite the talking points over and over and just hope that something sticks. And I think so far, because there just isn't anything tethered to reality at all here, it's like very easy to debunk. This hasn't stuck, but I think they're trying really hard with Hunter Biden and more prominent people. Like nobody knows who Andrea's sister is. Like no normal person knows this. No offense to Andrea's sister, but people know, who Joe Biden is. They know who Hunter Biden is, and so maybe they're hoping people might care more about that one. But none of it actually holds up in terms of facts, and facts still matter, contrary to what they claim.
Mm-hmm. It's also amazing because I really don't think that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee. I just don't feel like that's going to happen. So it's kind of funny that if this is what ends up taking him down, that like he was focusing on Joe Biden, and I just don't feel like Joe Biden's got the staying power. Like I feel like somebody's going to overtake him.
Yeah, I feel the same way. He was already going down the polls. I never thought he was going to be the nominee. If the Trump campaign thought he was, I mean, honestly, that's a rare misstep for them in terms of strategizing. I don't want to sound like I'm praising them, but they do have this ability to like think many moves ahead. And they've been, fairly good at doing that, at anticipating who may stop them, who may, prove to be some kind of opposition, getting rid of them. That's why they purged, for example, the FBI of all of its Russian mafia specialists. I think that's why they got Mueller in particular to run that probe. They thought this through. And I guess they thought that Joe Biden would be the nominee and they could just do a replay of the exact same playbook that they used in 2016 on Hillary Clinton, where they use a foreign opponent to smear him. I think it's going to be Warren. I mean, what I've been thinking all along is that Warren is going to slowly and steadily rise and gain ground, and Biden and Bernie are both going to drop, and that is what's been happening so far. And I think she's picking up, their voters. I think once, Buttigieg and Beto and some of the other, lower polling candidates are out, I think she's likely to take the people who wanted them as well. I think she's the most likely nominee at this point, and I don't know exactly what the Trump team will do, because they've tried the Native American thing. It didn't work. I mean, it did briefly, but it doesn't have staying power. And her entire platform is based around corruption. And she has a very deep understanding of financial corruption in America. She also understands how that corruption is related to foreign policy. And while she's not exactly talking about, transnational organized crime in those exact words and phrases, she does seem to have a grasp of the subject matter and what needs to be done to root this out. And so she's an actual formidable person for them. And I think they're going to do everything possible. I mean, I'm nervous about what they may try to do to her. I'm also kind of excited because I never thought we'd get a quality candidate that actually would give our country half a chance of combating these guys if by some miracle we have free and fair election and she wins it. But I think she actually could start that long process of, getting us back on track. And I mean, it's going to be a long process. It's going to go way beyond her term if she actually gets it.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that she has adequately addressed the Native American thing?
I think she's tried to. I mean, I certainly think she's made like a repeated, consistent, good faith effort to. I think she's listened to the criticisms, especially from Native Americans. I think she's designed policy initiatives that benefit Native American communities. I think she feels bad about what she did. She knows it was wrong. And I think she's at this point, it's like, people will choose whether or not to forgive her. And if they are Native American and they're deeply offended by what she did, I'm certainly not going to say like, no, you need to forgive her. And I don't think she's saying that either. I think she's done the best she could about a stupid thing she did, 30 or 35 years ago. And I don't know what more she can do from there. So we'll see. But it's like, I think Trump, he focuses on it in part because it's this whole sort of triggering affirmative action linked boogeyman, for the right wing, although it wasn't that. Like, it's not what got her in, but also because he hates Native Americans. I mean, he's constantly denigrating Native Americans. He's taking their land. He took, federal Native American sacred sites in Utah and wants to drill on it. He's had beefs with Native American casinos going all the way back to the early 90s and was making disparaging remarks on, tribal appearances. He hates Native Americans, so he's also pushing that button the same way he does with every, racist and xenophobic comment that he makes. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying Elizabeth Warren is Native American in that way, by the way, but I'm saying it may appeal to him to sort of try to portray her as one because he's hoping his fan base, has the same sentiments.
Yes, absolutely. So I feel like every time we talk, we always end up talking about the New York Times somehow. But I was actually flabbergasted by this. Okay, so the LA Times obtains audio of Trump saying in a secret meeting, basically saying that they should be killed, right? This is this whistleblower.
Hmm.
And then just hours later, the New York Times comes out with a story with identifying details, which I'm not going to repeat here, about the whistleblower. And it's like, what? Okay, we still don't know who that op-ed writer is that wrote in the New York Times, by the way, a year later. So I don't know what the rush is to like unmask this person, but whatever. But what are you thinking? It's like you're going to get this person killed, and there's really no
Yes.
reason to report that. You can report what they said. They left a very detailed message for you to report on. Report on that. They left a 10-page document, very detailed, full of things you could follow up on. Why are you so concerned with them? That is not what you should be focusing on right now. And even if you know that as a reporter, I don't think you should reveal it. Not at this moment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the New York Times is highbrow Breitbart. They are no different in my mind than Fox News or Breitbart or any kind of overtly right-wing propaganda arm of the White House. You know, occasionally they do a few articles on climate change or the 1619 Project, something like that, as an attempt to kind of counterbalance the constant, xenophobic, propagandistic crap that they churn out. You know, the same day that they tried to get the whistleblower killed, that morning, they had published an article on 6 quote unquote swing voters that were, loving Trump, just so into Trump. It turns out they're all GOP operatives, one of whom had written a book about Trump, had seen Trump in person 23 times and had been interviewed in other New York Times articles. They just interview the same little group of Trump voters over and over, and then they say it's a mass movement. And this kind of tactic goes all the way back to when they literally partnered with Steve Bannon to run Clinton Cash, which was, a propaganda book that had no basis in reality. The obsessive focus on the emails, their constant lying about Trump, Russia, and the FBI, the notorious headline like investigating Trump, FBI finds no link between Trump and Russia that they ran right before the election. They then fired the public editor who pointed out that they had lied to the public. The track record is so long. They are in Trump's corner. They've got people like Ken Vogel who are just putting out propaganda to help the administration. And people should not be subscribing to them. No one should be paying for that. I'm not saying, censor the Times, go burn down the building. I'm saying just don't give that money. Like, would you give your money to Fox News? Would you give your money to Breitbart? Like, probably not. The New York Times is the same thing. And this is incredibly dangerous, what they're doing or what they tried to do to the whistleblower. And I was glad to see that people realized, how dangerous this is because they don't have standards. I mean, even today, 2 of their reporters, just revealed that Trump had wanted to have migrants shot and killed, crossing the border. And then when he found out that that couldn't be done, he just wanted them shot. He also wanted moats filled with alligators and snakes. The New York Times has known this for a long time and decided to withhold that information for book sales. And I'm just like, if you're a migrant or if you are an American and you've got family in Latin America, maybe in like Honduras or something that are thinking of coming here, maybe they're not going to come, through the regular channels. Like, don't you want that out? Isn't this a public safety issue? Isn't the fact that the president is a freaking sadistic maniac a public safety issue? Like, wouldn't you want to tell people all this as soon as you can? And they'll withhold that, but they won't withhold the whistleblower's identity. I mean, that's bizarre. It's like, are you trying to get the maximum number of people killed? Because that's kind of what it seems like they're doing. And there's a steadiness to it, a sickness to it, where it's always, either ethnic minorities or people like in the, intelligence agencies that are trying to blow the whistle on Trump. Those are like the 2 most targeted parties by the New York Times. And that's very disturbing. And I don't completely understand what's behind it, but it's corporate culture. It's top down. I don't think it's something that reporters are even doing voluntarily. In fact, we know in some cases it's not because they've quit in disgust because they don't want to deal with this terrible newspaper anymore, even though it's allegedly so prestigious. They'd rather be somewhere where they could like sleep with a clean conscience. And so, all of the credit to them for that. But yeah, don't read the New York Times, people. It's bad.
but support journalism that you
Oh, yes.
do appreciate, of course.
Oh, yeah. Put that money to your local paper, the local paper that hasn't had any money for 20 years. Put that money to independent journalists, even like the biggest rivals of the New York Times, like the Washington Post, the LA Times, like they don't do things like this. Like no one else is doing this weird stuff at this level. Like every paper makes mistakes. Every paper runs a few bad stories or even makes, a major mistake on occasion. The New York Times is like the Trump of papers. It like makes a major mistake every single day. So I don't back that up. Like there are alternatives and you're not going to miss anything. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was also thinking about that tweet they had the other day about Brett Kavanaugh, where it was like, having a penis thrust in your face at a drunken dorm party may seem like harmless fun. Wait, no, that doesn't seem like harmless fun. That may be fun to you, but it's definitely not harmless.
There's something really wrong with them. And then everyone was like, oh gosh, well, there are these wonderful female reporters who reported that story. And I guess like some idiot intern just, tweeted that out. Nope, it was the female reporters who are friends of Brett Kavanaugh. It's some woman who like went to Yale, with Kavanaugh and was in his class, and that's why she's writing this story basically to defend him. She went on like The View the next day and defended him, and that's their culture. They probably do think that that's fun. And she was saying some really disturbing things. She was like, the woman who they didn't actually interview, but the one that Kavanaugh assaulted, not Christine Blasey Ford, but the other woman, they were like, oh, she just couldn't handle it because she was Catholic. And I'm like, what in God's name is wrong with you? Like, what are you saying here? Like, this is offensive on so many levels. Like, this is offensive to victims of sexual assault. This is offensive to Catholics. This is offensive to journalists. It's offensive to just anyone with like a baseline level of morality or normal human interaction. So I don't know, but there's something deeply wrong there, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Well, and speaking of Kavanaugh, and also speaking of moving the goalposts, I always thought that this hyper focus on all respect to Christine Blasey Ford and Deborah Ramirez, right? Those
yes, that's who I was thinking of before.
Let's hear them out, of course, but like his behavior at that hearing was disqualifying alone. I don't need to see anything else. I don't know why we have to focus on the minutia of stories that are secondhand and third hand, and maybe he did, and I believe he probably did those things, but it again, like moving the goalpost, focusing on this one thing, making it all about this one issue. And it's like his demeanor when he said like what reaped the whirlwind and the Clintons, and like I'm like, who is this guy? Like he can't be on the Supreme Court. Like just look at him. Like
yeah.
He's everything he's saying is ridiculous, and it does matter. It matters whether or not we believe these women and hear them out. I get that. I'm not saying that we should not listen to them, but like making it focused all on that is a mistake, because he doesn't have the demeanor to be on the court.
No, I mean, he doesn't have the demeanor. He has very, very likely committed multiple acts of sexual assault. And then there are other stories about him that were just dropped, like his finances. He had $200,000 of debt in baseball tickets. Weirdly enough, Paul Manafort also had $200,000 in debt from baseball tickets. I'm like, maybe, guys, this isn't really about baseball tickets. Like, maybe there's some seedy stuff going on with these little Republican operatives. He had that. There's this strange situation with Kennedy retiring. Justice Kennedy's son was Trump's personal banker at Deutsche Bank, which is the leading bank for Russian money laundering. Like maybe some money came out of there. There are all these stories related to Kavanaugh, things that should have been investigated in great detail before his confirmation hearings began. And they had months and months to do this. No one really did. I'm not saying it was easy and people just didn't decide to do it. I'm sure many people tried and just, ran into blocks because they've been trying to cover this up. But there are so many questions about his eligibility and suitability for that role. But it was obvious why they wanted him. And they wanted him because he had promised that he would never indict the president of the United States, in this case, Trump. He was just there to do Trump's bidding, to be his lackey. And that was the moment that honestly I felt the deepest despair since Trump was elected, because when a society, a government is moving from a democracy to an authoritarian state, the biggest bulwark, the thing that protects the democracy the most is the judiciary. And so what they always try to do is capture that. First they take the executive branch, then the legislature, and that happened. And then they go after judges and they pack the courts, and they try to pack the highest courts. And they've done it. They have packed the Supreme Court with enough Trump lackeys to get whatever kind of ruling they want. And that's very frightening, because no matter what comes next, like say by some miracle Trump is impeached and he's gone, we're still left with that. We're left with Kavanaugh, who should not be there, on the court. We're left with all these lower courts stacked with Trump appointees, GOP lackeys, compromised individuals who are just not going to rule according to law, but rule according to personality politics and, promises, and just unethical people. And that's a major problem. And another reason why I didn't understand why the Democrats wouldn't move faster, because they, of all people, should understand why that's a crisis,
Yeah, and, it's just, speaking of Supreme Court judges, every time I read anything about, if I see Ruth Bader Ginsburg's name trending anywhere, I'm like, oh no. I don't want to hear anything about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. No news is good news.
It's absolutely crazy how much we have to fear that. Like, this whole system needs to be overturned. Like, no one should be a judge, into their 80s. Although I saw an interesting interview with her where they were like, why didn't you quit during Obama's term? And she was like, because Mitch McConnell would have blocked my replacement. And I'm thinking that's true. And that's actually a good reason in some sense. But also, wow, are we so screwed up that this is just sort of taken as something that happens and not as like an outrage? It's like, oh, Mitch McConnell blocking the democratic process. I mean, that should be a really big deal. It should have been a really big deal, the first time that he did it. And I don't know. I mean, I wish there was more willingness to be on the offense here, from the Democratic side, because offense, honestly, is defense when your opponent is constantly doing dirty tricks to run you down.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I like Mayor Pete's thing about packing the court, spreading the Supreme Court out. Yeah, let's do it. Why not? I'm ready.
No, I was glad when he came out with that. I mean, I'm big on him as a candidate. Like, what do you think? Because he's in Indiana and you're in Indiana. Is he like, what's his reputation like there?
I think his biggest problem, and I think it's becoming more apparent over time, is that I don't think anyone of color really likes him at all. Yeah. And, I think he's had a lot of problems in that area that a lot of his supporters aren't ready to acknowledge. And I think he's obviously very educated, very quick. He can. I really appreciate that he can challenge Trump on. Well, you can challenge Pence, especially on the religion thing. I would love to see him go toe to toe if he was the vice presidential candidate with Pence. If that were to occur, that would be a fun debate. Mm-hmm. He's also from Indiana, and it would really be an Indiana throwdown.
Oh yeah, so very mild-mannered, but with like horrible contempt raging underneath the little smiles and niceties.
Yeah, the Midwest nice would it would disguise some things, but but yeah, no, I just don't. I think he has a real problem there, and I really don't think he's going to make it all the way. But I do know there's somebody in the parking lot outside my apartment here who has a Buttigieg, and if you look at the heat map of his donations, it's pretty squarely on Indiana. But
right. At first, I was kind of excited by him. I was like, oh, there's this guy like around my age. He's from the Midwest. He's sort of speaking my language, because he's talking about these big structural changes, like expanding the Supreme Court, getting rid of the Electoral College, and then it's like he turned into like Joe Biden Jr. And I was like, all right, yeah, not so much. And then I just, Warren kept coming out with plan after plan after plan. And I didn't expect to like anybody that much, but I just got full on board the Warren train and I haven't gotten off. But yeah, hopefully he'll, I don't know, develop over time and become more attenuated to these other issues, because he is intelligent, and that's a good thing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, I think in a couple of years, I think he could be a formidable candidate. It feels weird as somebody like only like a year younger than him to be saying that, but I think
super weird.
Given time to grow, I think he could really turn into something. But no, I think people generally like him. But yeah, I think he does have a problem with that officer-involved shooting that he's had to deal with, and there's other things with the black police chief that I'm not entirely sure what happened there, but he doesn't have. I think he a lot of his appeal is what other people think what people think other people think of him. Like they're like, oh man, he really like gets to these Republicans or conservative or moderate people who might not otherwise vote for a Democrat, but he can speak to them because he's a veteran. That's another thing I like about him, is that he can challenge Trump on the bone spurs thing, and that's cool. But yeah, it's like they're thinking, yeah, and that honestly, that's kind of what I thought. I was like, yeah, I'd like to see. What are you gonna say to that? Yeah, he's gay. Yeah, he's young. So what? He's a veteran. He speaks what, 7 languages? What's the problem here?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was interesting until, as time went on, I felt like he was kind of micromanaged by his campaign staff, which seems to be a very sort of conventional big donor Democrat campaign staff. And it's sort of like, I don't know, it sucked away the things I liked about him. But yeah, he is interesting and good on all of those points. And, I mean, honestly, though, like the whole slate, I guess with the exception of Tulsi Gabbard and Marianne Williamson, are pretty, yeah, I mean, there are ones I like more than others, but there's nothing approaching, even with those two, there's nothing approaching Trump. I mean, there's just nothing even close. And so, I think it's going to be either Warren, Biden, Bernie, I mean, maybe Harris if she comes in from the back, but probably one of those three. I mean, it's just a vast improvement. And even if it's one of the ones I don't like I don't like Biden very much, but it still would be a vast improvement.
Yeah, I've been my friend Jonathan and I have been watching the debates and talking about them on the podcast, and we just keep coming back to a Tulsi Gabbard, which she just repeats these Kremlin talking points all the time. And I'm like, what is going on there? Why don't people notice this? Like, she's like, there's going to be a nuclear war and we're at the most... I was like, whoa, slow down, lady. That's like a Russian like propaganda thing you're talking about there. What is you talking about?
I mean, there may well be a nuclear war, but it's like the people whose ass she's kissing are going to be the ones who drop that bomb. I mean, Trump is working with the Kremlin. He's like the Kremlin's partner. And I think they would very much like to, dually wield nuclear weapons to intimidate other countries and terrify them. I mean, because Trump has said so. I mean, that's in Putin has said so. That is where my brilliant analysis comes from, is they literally confess on these plans. But yeah, she's just a dictator sycophant. She does it with Assad. She does it with Putin. I'm slightly worried she's going to like pull a Jill Stein and do some kind of third party thing. And the thing is, she's not wrong in that we need an end to forever wars, and we need to stop jumping into, other countries with drones and with violence. I mean, she's absolutely correct on that. And I think the other Democratic candidates on the whole are saying pretty much the same thing. But it's like, you don't need to like kiss the ass of brutal dictators and ignore human rights to achieve that goal. You just don't. You need to strike a balance, and that should be obvious. And that's why she's so strange in that respect. And I don't quite know what she's up to, if she just has a major, major blind spot, or if it's something more nefarious than that.
Well, the one person that keeps coming back, who I would like to see on a stage with Trump, if it comes to that, is Kamala Harris, because I really like that she knows how to like press the case. Obviously, we've seen her in those Senate hearings. And I feel like that would be a useful tool, because she really knows how to like drill down on a point. Ask Joe Biden, right? But I would like to see that turned on the right targets. You know what I mean? Like that kind of prosecutorial thing. What do you think of her?
Yeah, well, I think she's great in the hearings. She's been very good, at questioning people. I remember her sessions in particular. Like, she's often good spontaneously. Her moment with Biden, is fairly spontaneous. Her best moments at other debates seem to kind of come out of nowhere. That said, she has this kind of like not manufactured, like cautious way of being a politician that I feel like she's nervous. I mean, maybe it's like she's had lifelong ambitions, and then all of a sudden she's plopped into this authoritarian hellscape, with the transnational crime syndicate, and is like, well, this isn't what I signed up for. Like, I'm not sure she fully grasps the level of, offense and level of change that needs to be done to really wipe these guys out. Like, I think she's a tough debater. I don't know if she's as tough in practice as she is as a debater. I mean, I'm more confident in her than I certainly am in Biden and in others. But I still think, Warren has the sort of best big picture outlook on this. And it's going to come less down to debates than kind of the whole thing, like media appearances, debates, policy plans, like everything, and how Trump, reacts. But yeah, Trump will have trouble, I think, demonizing her, I think, more than the others. He actually hasn't taken too much of a swipe at her from what I see. But the other thing is like, it shouldn't matter what Trump thinks of anybody, because he's a pathological liar and a sociopath. And so like, if he dislikes somebody, that's usually a point in their favor, which is something he does to create fake feuds with individuals whose material he wants you to read, by the way. Like the New York Times, but we'll see. She's all right. She's not my favorite, but I'm not going to complain if she's the nominee either.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, it doesn't take much to convince me to vote for generic candidate X at this point.
Oh yeah, so. I mean, that's the thing. As pissed as I am at the Democrats, and I'm not sure I've ever been this angry at them. Maybe during the Iraq War I was, but I'm very mad. There's no excuse now. At least back then, people were traumatized by 9/11, right. Not thinking clearly. Like, if you're traumatized by Trump, you actually can go and untraumatize yourself and do something. So I have no sympathy for that. Nonetheless, people should still vote for the Democratic candidates. They should do it locally. They should do it nationally, because this is a party that is dominated by a transnational crime syndicate and is dirty to the core and is not going to serve the public. And people seem to forget that, that the government is supposed to serve us. Our representatives serve us. And one thing that's driving me crazy is this sort of passive, supplicant attitude that I see displayed toward any official that's not completely bereft of ethics. Like, if, Pelosi hands people a crumb, everyone is like, oh, thank her, post the memes worshiping her. If the whistleblower, after doing nothing for 2 years, I mean, maybe this person did do stuff, and I don't know the full story. So maybe I shouldn't.
You don't know this. Maybe they wrote that op-ed too. We don't know that.
I mean, yeah, I have no idea. But, there are plenty of people surrounding the Trump administration could have spoken out a long time ago and alerted us to all of this and confirmed our worst suspicions. And they didn't do it. And whenever one of them does, it's like, oh, hero. And they do this with the never Trump Republicans. It's like, wow, you weren't wildly racist and lying. Like, wow, you're so amazing. And it's the standard for our behavior has plummeted so much. And I think it's because people are so afraid that if they see even a glimmer of humanity in somebody, they just crumble to the ground. And what worries me is that this spills over into impeachment, where they're like, you know what, if we just get him on the Ukraine thing, then he's impeached and that's good enough. And I'm like, no, it's really not. You deserve better than that. You, citizen of America, deserve so much better than that. You deserve to know everything bad that your government has done, and you deserve to get all the criminals out of office because they're actively hurting you. And it's like watching this abuser dynamic play out over and over. It's sad. It kind of breaks my heart, because it's how people become psychologically adjusted to authoritarianism. They begin to accept it. And they accept things that they never would have before, just because the alternatives are so much worse. But that's not a healthy way to exist as a citizen in a free society.
Yeah, and it's like when Nancy Pelosi gives a sarcastic clap, I'm supposed to be excited or something. And I'm like, I can't get worked up over this. I need to see a little bit
sarcastic.
More. Right.
That was a real clap. I mean, that was something that set off alarm bells in my head, not even because it was a real clap or whatever. I mean, she's very old school. She's an institutionalist. She's going to clap for the president even if it's Trump, which is lame, and she shouldn't clap for him. But all these people who are reading so much into it, reading things into her jewelry, and I'm like, no, she's not actually doing that. It would be cool if she was, but she's not. And it's not even important. It's not important how she claps at him or what she wears. It's important what kind of policies she tries to pass and what kind of accountability she tries to enforce. And she's not doing those things. And that's the actual problem we have here. What she did much more was target people like Ilhan Omar, and when that's the priority over targeting Trump, I grow concerned. But yeah, people really, they wanted to see something in her that I don't think is there. And it's part of this broader symptom. I think they did the same thing for Mueller. It's not unique to Pelosi in any way. They want a savior. They want somebody to save them from this. And I just don't think that is going to happen. I think there will be good people, who will do the right thing, or at least try to do the right thing. But it's not going to be like one person swoops in and saves the country. That's just not how anything ever plays out. And it's not going to be the case here.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And this Civil War talk is just so dangerous, and I think that's impeachable on its face too. And I don't know why the Democrats aren't jumping on that more and making every Republican answer for that, because it's game over if that's all we're talking about, just open violence in the streets. If this guy gets impeached, he can't be held accountable. Like that's what him and Giuliani are saying at this point, right? I mean, that's their line. You can't, the stock markets will tank and there will be civil war. It's like, okay.
And they said this again, like they said that in 2016. Like Roger Stone came out and said there will be a bloodbath if Trump loses. And they promised, militia violence and street violence. They promised global instability. It's the exact same playbook. And I don't know why they don't jump on that more, just as like Trump is threatening your safety. Like he's threatening your safety as an ordinary American who, no matter who you voted for, odds are you don't want to get swept up in this. And sometimes I feel like the Democrats have this weird idea that like all the people who voted for Trump, like all like 60 million or whatever, are all going to like come out, with their assault rifles and like their tanks or whatever they think they have and like go, hog wild. It's really not the case. I mean, the problem is it doesn't take a large number of people to cause an incredible amount of damage. Like we see that every time a mass shooting happens. But I think the number of people who are like, yay, Civil War II is really small, even among Trump's base. There are plenty of people that voted for Trump that, they hate liberals, they hate the Democrats, they want Trump to stay in office, they think this whole thing is bullshit. But I don't think that necessarily translates into I'm going to go out and kill people or I'm going to go and join another war. Like that's a very big leap. And it's weird to me. I sometimes feel like because our, political commentators, they come from the coasts and they think that like everyone who lives in regions like we live is like, constantly like, I don't know, like Civil War reenactors or I don't know what they think they're like, but like we're just regular people, like going to the supermarket, going to Target, not actually like prepping our militias. And I don't think they grasp that like, of course there are people that are like that, but they're all over the country. They're like not unique to the quote red states. Like you'll find some like militia armed up freak like everywhere you go. Every state's got at least one. And so I don't know. They don't seem to get that they're probably not going to alienate people by condemning a call to violence, because most people don't want violence. Maybe they want conflict, but they don't want like innocent people dead. I mean, maybe no one's ever accused me of being too optimistic about the state of human nature, but I honestly think that's true. Even from just, interviewing and talking to so many Trump voters in Missouri and Illinois, they're not really into this idea. They just want like evangelicals and guns and abortion stuff most of the time and aren't really wrapped up in this whole, it's a coup thing. So we'll see, though. Lots of people can be persuaded. So maybe, I don't know. At the same time, if people can be persuaded, the Democrats should be upfront and directing the narrative. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I was driving in Michigan a couple weeks ago, and there was this house I passed with a huge QAnon billboard painted on the side of their house, and I'm like, you don't need to worry about that guy. He's a lost voter to you. Don't worry about trying to please him, moderates or Democrats. You know what I mean? Like they keep trying to be like, how do we win over the Trump voter? It's like, don't worry about that. Just the people. So there's people that already like you that would definitely vote for you. Just listen to them. What do they have to say? And try to do what they want, and they'll come out for you more. You don't need to worry about what that guy's talking about.
Exactly. I mean, if they just stuck to their principles, like, here is who I really am. Here is what I stand for. Here is what I will do to you. Not do to you. Do for you. I'm like, it's still
a little more aggressive.
Like if I'm in office, here's my plan. If they're honest about that, and if they're honest about the fact that so many of our institutions are broken, that people are suffering, that people are in pain, I think that goes a long way, because that was part of Trump's message that actually resonated. Like you had, at least in the beginning, I think she kind of learned from Bernie to not do this. Clinton was like, look at how successful the Obama years were. Look at how good the economy is. Like, I'll keep this going. And everybody was like, hell no. Like, I can't pay my bills. I haven't had a steady job in 10 years. Like, my healthcare costs are through the roof. My state government is crazy. All these kind of things that the DNC seemed kind of oblivious about. And I don't think they are anymore. I think they've definitely learned that people have been feeling hard times. If you're just honest about that, I think that goes a long way. And I definitely don't think the goal should ever be like, let's win over the Trump voters. It should just be like, let's be the best candidate for the American people, broadly speaking, possible. And certainly, don't ignore the needs of non-white voters, of immigrant voters, of all the voters who Trump targets, because they've been targeted. And, they need, if anything, more attention, because they've been the targets of horrible actual policies that have been implemented and that need to be reversed. Things like, the Muslim ban, or things like the attacks on migrants. I mean, that's something that should be brought up. But yeah, and honestly, even with QAnon people, I don't think all of them are lost. I mean, one thing, I've been kind of following that. And one thing that's very interesting to me about QAnon, whoever is behind it knows what they're doing, because they mix in basically open, horrifying secrets, stuff like the Jeffrey Epstein case, which was something I'd been following for years, just waiting, like, are they ever going to arrest this guy? This is a pedophile sex trafficking operation that's also like a blackmail, an espionage operation, and is probably tied to Trump. I mean, it is, because Trump was accused of raping a 13-year-old procured by Epstein's operation. Like, are they ever going to do anything about this? And one of the few places I saw this consistently discussed, but completely without the Trump element, was QAnon. They knew about the Maxwell family. They knew about these espionage ties. And I was like, people are trusting in QAnon because they are talking about stuff like that. They're talking about like the Sackler family. That's another case that comes up. But then it's mixed with all this bullshit. It's mixed with all of this ludicrous, trust the plan. It's kind of like how people were with Mueller, honestly. Like, trust the plan. Trump is going to save us. Yeah, like Trump is, draining the deep state. It's all like Trump is the secret hero, and everything he's doing that seems insane must have some internal logic. And so some people, I think, following QAnon are just kind of scared, and they're seeing really disgusting people in politics, like pedophiles and rapists and traffickers and drug dealers, like at the highest level of government. They're totally correct about that. I mean, I'm sorry, like, they're right and the institutionalists are wrong. Unfortunately, at the same time, they're saying things like JFK Jr. has risen from the dead in his Area 51 UFO and is going to like fix the election process. So, you can't like, they've managed to basically mush all of this together, which honestly I think helps. Like, if I come out and I start saying Jeffrey Epstein is linked to international intelligence operations, before he was arrested, before he died, people thought I was nuts. And then when he was arrested and he, allegedly died, then people understood what I was talking about. But before that, they'd say to me, you sound like QAnon. I heard that on QAnon. And it was automatically discredited because it was associated with that. And I think that is something that the Trump people and who I do think are the QAnon people have been doing to kind of kill these giant, really scandalous, really horrifying stories, nip them in the bud by making them seem very like Alex Jones, wacko land territory,
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's like you couldn't, with the Epstein thing, you couldn't design a more perfect conspiracy story. The cameras off and the guards fell asleep, and one of them wasn't even a guard, and his neck was broken, and he had tried to commit suicide days before, and all these things, and it's like, come on, what do you expect
people to do? The backstory to that is so awful. Like, I have a new book coming out in April. It's called Hiding in Plain Sight, and so I turn in basically my final first draft of it in June. And there's a whole chapter about Epstein. And I think my editor is kind of like, what the hell is this? Because, the Miami Herald and Julie Brown at that paper had been covering it, but mostly it was kind of under the radar. And I had a lot of stuff about connections to, an international mafia, connected to the Kremlin. I think she thought it was a little out there. Then he gets arrested and she's like, okay, whoa, this is a big deal. Then he, quote unquote, dies or commits suicide. He obviously did not commit suicide. He was likely murdered. I have other theories. I'm not going to share them for fear I will be labeled a QAnon type. But, obviously this is not normal. Like, everything, as you just listed, went wrong in this particular case and made him, it's all very suspect. And then you have Bill Barr saying, oh, don't worry, I'll look into it. It's like, sure you will, but not in the way we want you to. And so, yeah, that's a really big story. Another thing that was disturbing about that to me is that after the Epstein story dropped, suddenly all of these publications were like, oh, guess what? I've got like a decade worth of horrible Epstein things. Like we find out about MIT Media Lab. We find out about all these other people who had been paid off by him. And I'm like, okay, so where were you all these years that, underage victims were suing him? Like, where were you to stand up against this? Why were you taking money from a pedophile, rapist, sex trafficker, Alan Dershowitz? Like, what's wrong with all of you? And that's depressing to see, because I do feel like it's part of this same system, the one that produced Kavanaugh and Barr and all these other terrible people. It's just a system of elite criminality, and they get away with it over and over and over for decades unless somebody really clamps down and stops it. And I hope that that's what happens. But I don't know. I sort of feel like I'm like among few who are very loud about this. And I know why, because, we're all threatened all the time. But nonetheless, it's not my job. It's the job of people who actually have the power to do something, and hopefully they'll rise up.
Mm-hmm. But tell me about Guns N' Roses.
Guns N' Roses was awesome. I cannot believe I've seen them twice. Like, I think like one of the first times I talked to you, I was about to see them for like the first time ever, because for most of my life they'd been broken up. I went to Louder in Life, so I drove through state because I drove to Kentucky. I saw a whole bunch of bands. I saw Suicidal Tendencies, and Mark Muir should be like directing the House Democrats on impeachment because he has like all the right tips. I saw Andrew WK, and I partied hard. And and I saw this band called Dirty Honey. They were great. They're like Guns N' Roses Jr. I love them. I love their EP. So I was psyched to see them. But the highlight, of course, was Guns N' Roses. There was like, I don't know, 75,000 people. It was like wild. They did a great set. They covered Wichita linemen of all things, which was just like, it made me cry. I was so happy to see them, even though it was like 10 billion degrees out in the heat. And it was awesome. I want to just keep seeing them again. And I also found out that like Duff has read my book, The View from Flyover Country, and his solo album was partly inspired by it. And that has like blown my mind, because that's beyond any expectation like 12-year-old me, for example, could have ever had. So it's been a good year, Guns N' Roses wise. Everything else, not so much. So.
Right. GNR's doing great, but we're all kind of struggling otherwise.
GNR, part of my life, which granted is a very big part of my life, has never been so good, but everything else kind of, plummeting in the background. So.
Well, great. Well, hey, thanks for taking so much time to talk with me, and hopefully we'll have more fun things to talk about after Trump is out of office, hopefully soon. But either way, we'll talk. But
all right. Good to talk to you.
Yeah,
great.
Have a good night.
Bye. You too.
Join the Rob Burgess Show mailing list. Go to tinyletter.com/The Rob Burgess Show and type in your email address. Then respond to the automatic message. Also, please make sure to comment, follow, like, subscribe, share, rate, and review everywhere the podcast is available, including iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Twitter, Internet Archive, TuneIn, RSS, and now Spotify. The official website for the podcast is www.therobburgessshow.com. You can find out more about me by visiting my website, www.thisburgess.com. If you have something to say, record a voice memo on your smartphone and send it to therobburgessshow@gmail.com. Include voice memo in the subject line of the email. Also, if you want to call or text the show for any reason, the number is 317-674-3547. Until next time.